Hello, everyone. I am Cristiano from Artwork. Today, I have the pleasure and the joy of interviewing Peter Woodburn. He is one of the artists who won our call Limitless, and he is also due to have a solo exhibition with Artwork early this autumn. Am I correct?
That's it, yeah.
So make sure to keep up with his work and keep following us on our social media as well. So let's talk about Peter now. Peter, he is a photographer. He has studied also literature actually, so he has a very in-depth knowledge of literature and poetry. Now he's working as a photographer and he does mostly landscape photography, very much focused on the natural element. So today we're gonna talk about Peter's career, his working method, and his participation in Limitless. So what it means for him, Limitless as a concept, and more specific to his work. So hi Peter, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Hi there.
So Peter, how did you approach photography in the first place as a working method? Can you talk also more about your career as an artist?
Yeah, I started photography, I think, when I was 5 years old. And that was because my father, who plays a big role in all of this story, gave me a camera. And I think he gave me a small injunction or a small instruction, if you like, a mission. He said, this is to take photographs of the family with, because he was convinced that he would never manage to do it himself. And so I started off taking photos of the family, discovering photography as an art form when I was a graduate student. And as a result of that, tried to do the thing myself, because another principle I think I learned from my father and possibly from my schooling was that you should be able to do everything. So I assumed I could make photographs that would be good. I think I was wrong at the time. When I look back on the work of my first exhibition when I was in my mid-20s, it was, of course, silver chemistry work, and it was, I think, not very good. But I was proud to have had an exhibition. In parallel, I was starting my real career, my main career as a teacher of English, having studied, as you said, your introduction, having studied literature. I came back to photography as a result of painting. I've always loved painting, both landscape painting and abstract painting. And when I was 50 or so, having spent a career, a lot of my career, teaching poetry to school children and trying to teach them that creativity was key to their lives and their intellectual and emotional development, something I believed very strongly, I looked at myself and thought, I haven't created anything. I've been remiss. I should catch up. So I did what I long wanted to do and started painting huge abstract paintings based in fact on landscape, skies and rivers and so on. I followed that up by turning to photography. I was delighted, I was utterly thrilled by the digital revolution. When that came along, it changed my practice completely. I moved from black and white to colour, and it all seemed to me the most incredible fun and to give the most seriously wonderful results. I bought myself a printer. I worked for many years completely in secret, taking photographs of one particular landscape, which became a kind of myth to me, which is the local river just down the road here. And as a result of that, made some images which I thought were interesting. When I retired, which is very recently, I became professional. I had to, under French law, in order to be able to sell my work or to try to sell my work. And that's a very recent development. But it's not really a career in art, not just yet.
I mean, it's the start. And
It's a start. Yeah.
yeah, and you already have a lot of experience because you've been practicing for years, as you mentioned, also in different media. I didn't know about your paintings.
Not many people do, no. um, they're in all the paintings I produced are in this house, and I'm proud of them, but they stay a secret. I would like one day to return to painting, but I think that's for a little bit later on. I'm not sure. For the moment, I love photography, and I think for me it's important that my photography gets me out. Retired people, as you probably realise, run the risk of becoming disconnected socially, and photography avoids that. That's very important for me. But equally, there's the idea I have about, well, it's perhaps connected with the confinement. The confinement in France, the lockdown, as we say in English. Sorry, I'm using the French word there. The lockdown cut me off from my landscape sources. It cut me off from here particularly. I literally couldn't travel to this place where I've done most of my photography. And it made me appreciate and value and reimagine, in a way, the sites I could not visit any longer. I was limited to sites which were within a kilometre of my house, which seemed to me very
You
cruel.
kept working.
Pardon?
You kept working even during lockdown, but in a
I
small
did,
area.
but it wasn't easy. Of course, it was very hard for many people who were working from home or, working using Zoom and so on. They were having to change their habits. For me, it was more imaginative, or I think it was more ethical. I realized that photography for me is a kind of freedom to go where you want and look at things closely and spend time in sites that you pick. Just spend time, not necessarily take photographs. All of that was very important to me, I realized, and I was cut off from it. In fact, I started taking some still life photography using artificial light inside the house in the early morning. And that yielded some interesting photographs, but somehow they were not really my work. They're kind of parallel. It's not that they were false, but they were a sidetrack, I think.
Yeah.
They were an adjustment to the conditions of the confinement. So, yeah, I think I would say of the lockdown, the big effect was an effect on my imagination.
I was reading about your work, and you mentioned that the sites that you usually take pictures of. So you mentioned the south of France, and the landscapes in that area particularly are your inspiration. And you said that the love that you have for myth and for literature, and you studied in literature, they kind of come together in your work.
I do very much. I guess it partly comes from my studies. I did a first degree in literature, and then I did 3 years of research on landscape poetry from the Romantics onwards, through to contemporary poetry, which was, of course, a very big topic. This was in English and American literature. It's a thesis I never completed, but it kind of set an agenda for thought and for practice in the rest of my life. And I think the surprising thing is, when I came to photograph landscapes around here, something came out of my knowledge of literature, which I really was not expecting. And this was the idea that somehow in this Mediterranean landscape, I was seeing something which looked like the underworld, or as it's portrayed in Greek myth. So in other words, life after death, if you like. So in this very dazzlingly bright, lively, wind-blown, sun-saturated landscape, I started thinking about life after death, which my father, to come back to him, my father was a Church of England pastor. He was a vicar. And he believed most literally in life after death. And he believed that he would meet me after death. I don't find it possible to believe that. But I found myself in this landscape having a vision of the underworld, Hades, as it's called. And I saw it as a kind of eternal world that this landscape here was giving me access to. There are things which explain this. There are things about looking at reflections in water which look very much like looking into an underworld,
Yeah.
particularly if you're looking at trees reflected upside down.
Yeah,
There's also a predominance of cypresses, and I always saw Hades as populated by cypresses, those kind of black vertical pillars. But I was also thinking of a poem, I think, by D.H. Lawrence, where he talks about the underworld, and he talks about the shapes of black flames in the underworld and so on. So, yeah, in taking photographs of landscapes, for me, I'm taking photographs of mythical sites under the gaze of eternity. I have to say, I mainly keep this to myself because I am, in fact, a very rational person. I think it seems a bit crazy to me. I'm sharing it with you now because you ask, but it provides a very strong motivation.
Yeah, so thank you, and I
Thank
will
you very
hopefully
much.
see you very soon in Naples.
Mhm.
And for the rest of our spectators, keep following us on our social media. Thank you for being with us, and keep posted with Peter's work. It's going to be very interesting, and we have a solo exhibition planned. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, again.